Hey, you. Can I tell you a secret? I'm actually from the future, and I've traveled back in time to tell you that these first couple episodes might sound kind of bad. And that's because we were just starting out. So for episodes 1 through 6, the audio quality isn't as good. But don't worry, as most things in life, it gets better. Starting with episode 7, the hottest sports entertainment thing in the world. And once again, this is a reminder from the future. We have social media now on all major social platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, if that's your thing. And just wanted to remind you to give us a follow, a like, or even check us out. Now, I'll get out of your way and go back to the future and let you enjoy the episode. Have fun.
Before we get started, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let us explain.
Anchor has the tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast straight from your phone or computer.
When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more.
It is everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
And best of all, Anchor is totally free.
Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
All right, welcome to episode 6 of Searching for MacGuffin with your host George, Gabe,
And Link.
Today we're going to be talking about a very special topic in our hearts and minds, and that is the state of Star Wars. So Star Wars is something that's been ever present in my life as long as I can remember, and it's something that's kind of grown and changed with me as I've evolved, and I think it's the same for each of you guys. So what we want to do is we're going to kind of take a look at then and now and see where we're headed with Star Wars as a brand, as a universe, as
A religion.
as an idea. So I want to start first exploring what our first experiences were with Star Wars. Me personally, I remember watching them very, very young. I can't even tell you how old I was, 3, 4, 5. There were these old CBS Fox tapes that my parents would get. They were part of like a movie club, kind of like Columbia House, if you guys are old enough to remember that, where you would get like CDs, movies sent. But I remember specifically it was only like Fox films, and they all had the same like gray border on them. And so basically, for me, movies growing up were just movies made by Fox for the first couple of years. And Star Wars, the first one, was one of the earliest movies that I saw. And my older brothers and sisters were really into Star Wars. They loved these movies. But I remember the moment where it became mine, where I really gravitated towards and was like, oh, Star Wars is something that is like super important to me, was around 1995 when the THX remastered versions of it. Now, these aren't the special editions that would come out in 97. These were just, Lucas had touched them up. They had THX remastered sound, was this new technology that they had to make everything clear and in stereo, and they had recolorized it for the Laserdisc previously, and the picture was as pristine as it was then. And they re-released them in the theaters. And that's when I jumped in and watched them one by one theatrically. And that's way different. I don't know about you guys, but when you, especially at a younger age, when you experience a movie in a theater, it's way different than experiencing it at home, especially back then when, you know, we didn't have the sound and the video and the audio, you know, the screens that we have nowadays to kind of simulate that theatrical experience. It was night and day. So I fell in love with these movies, and I bought them when they were re-released on VHS, the ones with the Stormtrooper and the Vader and the Yoda heads, if you've seen them. So that's when, to me, Star Wars became super relevant. And that was it. We just had those 3 movies, and for a long time, that's all that I had. You know, those 3 movies, and they existed kind of in a vacuum. What about you, Gabe? When did Star Wars become, you know, relevant for you?
So, growing up in the same family, obviously, we had we had, especially like my dad was a huge Star Wars fan. So a lot of the times it was just playing on in the house. My first memories of watching it, I may not have like remembered everything, but I remember I was around like 3 or 4 years old when it was being played. And I mean, in reality, I could just remember the Ewoks. Those are probably the most, like, what I remember the most is like as a kid.
Yeah.
But I remember when the hype for the prequels was coming out, like I think when Phantom Menace was coming out, I was like 3, so I wasn't going to be in the theaters for that. It was a bit after that, right before Attack of the Clones came out, I watched all those movies and where I could actually remember them, especially the original trilogy, of course. And that's when I remember I was just like, man, I remember feeling like, yes, the good guys won in A New Hope. This is odd. Like, it was incredible. And then in Empire, I just felt straight terror. Like, I was a bit traumatized as a kid with Empire, because I mean, I love Luke so much, and he just got his hand chopped off, and he just got his butt kicked. Like, he got whooped. But also seeing like Yoda was like, there was like so many positive negatives that I just, as a kid, I didn't know how to deal with it. Like, it was like, this is a movie, like, aren't like good guys always supposed to win? Like,
Right.
this, like, isn't there always supposed to be like a resolution towards the end? Like, and so like it was difficult for me to deal with that. And then I think towards Return, when we get like the climax and the fight, and just, I think what stays in my mind is the like when like 2 moments in that movie is like when Luke first ignites his green lightsaber, when he's saving his friends, and then Luke and Vader fighting in front of the Emperor. That for me was just, it was really special, and it stayed with me. And I think there was a point in time where, as I grew up, it kind of became not as relevant in my life. I was going through a lot of changes, socially, physically, and mentally, that like Star Wars was kind of like being put on the back burner. It wasn't at the focus. And then it wasn't again until college that I met a friend of mine. This was around the time The Force Awakens was coming out, and I didn't really know much about this guy, but we just so happened to be in the same room when the Force Awakens trailer dropped, and we both freaked out. And after that, we've been inseparable. He's like my brother now, but like we've been inseparable ever since. Always talking about it every day, and so that moment, I think was definitely like watching the Force Awakens trailer was definitely like the starting point to like the renaissance of Star Wars in my life, to where like it was again cemented when you watch The Force Awakens. I watched it with the same guy, and it's just been a journey after that. So I think for me, it's a bit complicated. So like I feel like it's in 2 points. One when I was 5, and the other when I was, I want to say 20, 21.
Yeah, for me, Star Wars was always there in my house. It's always, for me, to me, it's always been in the background. The first time I watched Star Wars, I was 5, and like Gabriel, all I really remember were the Ewoks, and especially the scenes where they were killing them and they were dying. I remember crying. Like, why are they killing the adorable
It was
bear?
really sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. Why would you kill something cute? So that's how I got into Star Wars. You know, my dad was very into science fiction, and my family too, so my siblings as well. So they were always watching it. And I think that was '98 when I watched it. The prequels came out. I didn't watch the first one in movie theaters, and then I watched the episodes 2 and 3 in the movie theaters. But they weren't well received, right?
Right.
Especially by my friends, you guys, my sister and George, who's her husband. So growing up, I'm like, all right, Star Wars wasn't, they made this movie that we were excited for. People were excited. I wasn't really excited for it, but people were excited for it, and then they disappointed. So yeah, Star Wars is always there in the background for me. So I didn't really pay much attention to it. I would get Star Wars toys for Christmas. I remember I had this huge, not this huge, but I had this dewback as a toy, and I loved that toy. But it was just always there for me in the background. I never really got into it. And you guys were into it. My friends were into it. So whenever you guys spoke about and talked about Star Wars, I was like, all right, cool, yeah. But I got into Star Wars when I was in college, especially that year that Clone Wars was introduced, was inputted on Netflix. that's when I got into Star Wars because I
Right.
started watching Clone Wars because I heard so many good things about it, and it was just great. And from there, I've been hooked on to Star Wars ever since. So Clone Wars for me was the reason why I'm in Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars fan.
What was it about Clone Wars?
I don't know. I just really enjoyed the. It was just fun, you know. I grew up people saying, "Oh, the prequels suck," right? Anakin, Hayden Christensen's a terrible actor, and the Clone Wars like it redeems Anakin.
Yeah.
And then you get Ahsoka, who kind of sucks at the beginning, and like, oh, now I'm like, I went from hating Ahsoka to like, oh man, I wish she. Why does she get her own stuff? You get me? I love Ahsoka. She's one of my favorite characters, and then Obi-Wan as well, who is my favorite character when it comes to Star Wars, is awesome throughout the whole series. So that's what got me into just the characters. Got me into.
So would you say it's like, because I know you're a fan of the animated medium, would you say like that was kind of like a point for you? It's like, oh, Star Wars in animated form. Like, was that a reason like you kind of wanted to check it out, just because it was just like it's a TV show about Star Wars?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both, because I know they had this Clone Wars 2D show, right? I didn't really watch. I haven't watched it.
I mean, it wasn't really a
But
show.
it wasn't. It was like a short, right?
Yeah, like every episode was like 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then a new one every day. So
Oh, okay.
like the whole season is about an hour after the season.
okay. So yeah, I do like you said, I do like animation, but it was just the fact that Star Wars was there. I'm like, all right, let me just watch this. You guys recommended it to me. Didn't have much friends in my first year of college. Really making friends there, but I watched it and I really enjoyed it, and like ever since then I've been hooked.
Awesome.
And I think you can do a lot more with animation than you can in live action.
Yeah,
So that's what I love
true.
about Clone Wars. Like you can actually see like Ahsoka do all these crazy flips, and then you watch her Rosario Dawson do it, and you're like, ah.
I
She
mean,
jumped. That's what she did. She
Yeah.
jumped.
I think you gotta like, you have to have different expectations
Yeah.
depending on the medium, because that is what's cool. It's like, oh, you get to see like all this crazy stuff that you're not like, if they did it in a movie, it would cost $500 billion. Like,
Yeah.
just this scene. And then also you can get away with doing some spectacular stuff, because also if you go too crazy in the prequels, when the Jedis are like running at super speed or like jumping like 3 stories, you're kind of like, it feels fake. Like the suspension of disbelief is broken, but it's not when it's animated.
Yeah.
So you get to do cooler stuff.
Yeah.
Because as much as you might want Rosario Dawson to do all this stuff, if
You know,
she would have started doing that on TV, you'd probably be like, oh man, this is like, I don't know, Fast and the Furious or something. And not Star Wars, which I think we might get to at some point. Now, the question I wanted to get to you, that I wanted to give to you, was what was it that drew you to Star Wars specifically?
We're starting with me.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So, what drew me to Star Wars? I mean, I feel like there's so many. It's one answer, but like there's so many different like components of that answer, and I think it's just, well, obviously the introduction was the family aspect. My whole family basically watched it and they loved it, and my dad is a huge fan, and seeing like his passion for it, really, that's what drew me towards it. But what kept me and what made it my own in a sense was that I feel like when I was watching this, you kind of, you feel it a lot in Empire, is this sense of like, man, they're really taking on the world, like in our sense the world, but in then like the galaxy,
Right.
Like this little band of like people who don't want to conform to what the space government is telling them to, like, and obviously like we see it as like they're evil. They're bad people.
Yeah.
And so just the fight for good and evil, but the fact that there's like the story of like those 3 friends, Luke, Leia, and Han, coming together and helping these people, like trying to fight for something.
Yeah.
That fight that included friendship, that includes family, because by the end of it is a family. It's a story about family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something that's like, it's special to me because like I love my family, and this was something I was able to share with them. So although my uncles and my aunts and my cousins, my parents aren't running around with lightsabers and using the Force and stuff,
Some of them.
maybe that's true, actually, there's video. there was a part where I can definitely relate to like a lot of the characters and take different things from them, and it was just something really special for me, and that was me as like a kid. And I feel like as I grew older, as I changed mentally, physically, whatever like we were getting for Star Wars, like you view it differently.
Right.
As like you start to change, you start to see things not necessarily as black and white, and I feel like Star Wars has done a great job to maintain that and like also open up new avenues to do that. But the short answer, I think it's family on one end, and on the other also is could be the spiritual factor with the Force. I consider myself religious, but there are certain aspects as well that I take from there that it's like I can apply in my own life that I appreciate, and I just feel like Star Wars is so huge, so big, but at the same time so intimate in certain situations. So that's it for me.
Yeah, well put.
I think for me, what draws me to Star Wars is this great conflict, this great controversy between the battle between good and evil.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, and you started off in the original trilogy, episodes 4 and 6, right? Yeah, 4 and 6, and it seems like it's very simple, like Vader bad, Luke good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to the prequel when they're expanding the universe, and you see all the politics that plays behind it and everything else, and it gets more complicated. And now we're in the sequels, and you see how the results of those consequences of how complicated it is the whole battle between good and evil is. And I just and I wonder, like, I've always wondered, like, is there ever peace in Star Wars, in the galaxy of Star Wars, in the universe of Star Wars, right? Or are they always fighting? Is good and evil always fighting against each other?
Never-ending battle.
And is it a never-ending battle? I know and it kind of reminds me of like how we are. Like, I feel like it's a never-ending battle here, but So I just like that, and like seeing how the little actions have big implications in the future, and how you don't really think that those implications are going to reach all the way to the sequels, like. Having Palpatine out of nowhere come back, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So that's what draws me. I just love this battle between good and evil, and asking myself, is it ever going to be over? Because I'm watching Mandalorian, and it's like, no, the Empire's still there.
Yeah.
But we don't really see the Force. You don't really see Jedi. So did the good guys lose?
Right.
So that's what grabs my attention.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think that battle of good and evil, and I think you hit it right. Like, you hit the nail right on the head when you said that it's so black and white in the original trilogy, and I think that's what draws me to the original trilogy. It's simple, and like it's about my life, but it's in plain terms, especially as a kid, because as we all just shared, the first time we were exposed to it, we were really young, and it's easy to understand, And what I love about Star Wars is that it's deep. And it's deeper than it actually is. Because in reality, it's like space cowboys, it's samurais, it's, it's laser beams. It's every, like, kid's dream, right? Fighter pilot, or be, have superpowers. But the complexities of it, and it's interesting what you said, all the politics and behind, like, the prequels, that I think that's one thing that I think a lot of people, believe George missed the mark when he made the prequels, that it's supposed to be a movie for kids, and then it's like all about like taxation and trading and like trade. But what I love about that actually is that it opens up the conversation for the Clone Wars, because you really don't have time in a movie like that. That's what I think the problem is in the prequels.
That's why the shows are better.
Yeah, because in the shows you like see like the Senate, you see the like diplomatic actions, like Padme, like they go into the nitty gritty of like bills and stuff, and it's like, oh, but if you defund this, then how are you gonna? And it's like, oh, this is with the real world, and that's what it is. Like, it's complex, because life is kind of the same way. Like, life is simple, and life is really complicated, and that's what I think Star Wars on this show. What we're trying to do is trying to explore what that driving force is. What is that mechanism that moves the story along? And that's not just in Star Wars, which is today's topic, but also in our lives. What is it that drives us to continue moving forward with this? And sometimes that's difficult to do in the absence of narrative. So like I said, I fell in love with Star Wars. You know, I was ready to commit. You know, I wanted to put a ring on it around 95, right? But I wouldn't get another Star Wars movie for a few more years. And I grew up with this mentality that that's it. There was these 3 movies and it was it and it was over, you know?
Yeah.
So during that time period, I reached out for what was known as the extended universe. And that's when I started getting the like Super Star Wars on the Super Nintendo. I remember around the N64 times we got Shadows of the Empire, and that was a game adaptation of a book that had come out that I was really excited about. And how did I get really excited about it? Because they had a series of toys, and I saw the Emperor Shizor and the Crimson Guards, and he had like a force. It's not like a lightsaber, but it's like a shield, like a light shield, right? Mm-hmm. And just like all this crazy stuff. I was like, this isn't in the movies. This is cool. This might be cooler. So it's like, read the book, play the game, buy the toys, make up your own stories, your own adventures of like your own extended universes, the adventures you go on with those characters in their time. And that's what kept me going until, you know, Lucas decided to revisit and make more movies. There was a period of time there where none of us had, from 2005 to 2012, after all the prequels were done.
Yeah, we didn't have anything.
We didn't have anything.
And it ended in a sour note.
Yeah. Expand on that a little bit more.
I think people had higher expectations for what they wanted Star Wars to be, especially the prequels, and George Lucas's idea did not meet those expectations, so a lot of people hated the prequels.
Right.
I know I grew up with you guys, and you guys tell me the prequels sucked, so in my mentality, like, oh, the prequels sucked, right? But for us, it ended in the bad note.
Yeah.
You tell that to, you know, I call them Zoomers, but Generation Z. You tell that to Generation Z. They love the prequels.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh.
Like, that was their first Star Wars. Like,
yeah, that was their first. Yeah, exactly.
Like, maybe they went to the theater and they hadn't even seen the old one.
And I do wonder, like, a lot of people now don't like the sequels, right? Especially the kids that grew up not liking, the kids that grew up for the prequels and loved them, now they hate the sequels. So I wonder, like, all right, what about the next generation? Are they going to love the sequels as much as, like, Generation Z loves the prequels?
Right. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, you can expand on it as well. For the people who, like, grew up in this time of the prequels, like, it's just all Star Wars. You know, sometimes when you're that young, if you hit it that young, like I know some of the kids, my family, and some of the younger students that I have, like, this is their first Star Wars. So then they go back and they love that because it's tied to this. And it's just all Star Wars. Like, I don't care. I don't care what it is. If it's Star Wars, I love it.
No, yeah, as a kid, after watching the original trilogy was something I was like, okay, I like this. Like, I don't understand all of it, but I like it. When I'm watching the prequels, there was still stuff I didn't understand because I was pretty young. But visually, I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Seeing Mace Windu's purple lightsaber the first time, I was like, there's another color? I was for, like, the Coliseum scene in episode 2, seeing a Mandalorian fight Obi-Wan, seeing Jango fight Obi-Wan, like, there was a bunch of cool things that I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, man, this is awesome. But even as a kid, I didn't get the same feeling as I did from the original trilogy. Like, yes, it was all Star Wars. Yes, like, it was all the same in a different time period, but it wasn't the same type of feeling I get. Maybe it's me because of the eras or whatever it was. But for me, it wasn't the same. But yeah, like, I don't remember it. Like, as a kid, I was like, I didn't remember everyone saying, this is bad, this is trash, or whatever. Once I got older, I was like, oh, like, the prequels were looked down upon. The majority of the time. But I mean, as a kid, I was like, yeah, this is Star Wars. It's fun. I really enjoy it. The toys, I was all over the toys as a kid. Yeah. Even my dad, my family members, like, they all had like collections of stuff and like for the different timepieces as well. And yeah, it's something that I didn't really get the hate on, like, for the prequels at first. But then afterwards, like, as I grew up, as I watched them, I'm just like, oh, these movies aren't as great as an adult. Or whatever. Like, these movies aren't as good.
The dialogue isn't as
but I feel like people can still find enjoyment in it. And so at the end of the day, it is Star Wars. So.
Well, going back to that period of 2005 to 2012, Link said something interesting. He said how they ended on a sour note, that last episode 3. It's not just the reception to it, because I think most people like 3 much more than 1 and 2, because it was just the end. Like it, and by the end of the movie, it turns into the Star Wars that we fell in love with. It's like, oh look, stormtroopers and like Vader,
We're getting there.
you know, and like those final shots where he frames them to look like, you know, the original films. So that's nice. But also from a narrative perspective, it ends on a down note. Like the Republic is wiped out, and Vader and the Emperor are in charge, and it's kind of like, oh, this is not the happy end. Like, it's the opposite. We like it when it happens in the middle chapter,
but not at the end.
Like, yeah, maybe not so crazy. Not that we don't like it, because we knew that's where it would have to end in order for A New Hope to make sense. But it leaves you from a narrative perspective, like the bad guys won. And Star Wars has always kind of been about hope, and it's not a very hopeful like place where it leaves you.
It was also a little bit confusing because it's like you spent 2 movies rooting for these people. Like, you spent two movies rooting for the Republic, only for them to turn into the bad guys.
Yeah.
Like the clones, like like they're our army, they're the good guy army. Oh, they just killed all the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and at first I was like, what? Like, obviously you know what happens at the end, but when I watched it when I was young, I was like, why are they killing the Jedi? And it was a very, like, even now, like when you watch it, like with the music, and it's still a very somber scene. Like Order 66, like it's just it's something like I'll always remember when I watched it the first time. I was like, this is depressing, this is super sad. And it was also like, it was pretty confusing in the sense of like, these people were the good guys and now they're the bad guys.
Yeah.
This kid who we seen from a young age now as a young man, like as a Jedi, like he's super cool, he's super awesome, and now he's killing a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Children.
Now he's a bad children.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to process. But I think that story-wise, like that's a, like, I don't know, I just really enjoy that. Maybe not how it was executed, but I think the premise of it is pretty attractive.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to happen in order for the original trilogies to make sense and to be more meaningful.
Yeah.
They have to lose. It has to end in a bad note in narrative wise in the prequels, so that there's more redemption, I guess.
Yeah.
In the original trilogy.
Yeah. It's just interesting because it's like you said. So like, Anakin is our protagonist, and he turns. The Jedi like are culpable because they kind of handled the whole situation of the prequels like in self-interest and you know, militarizing themselves, and then they're all gone, and then Yoda fails, and then he runs away. You know, it's like, it's a lot of yeah.
It's a lot of L's you're taking.
Yeah.
But I didn't, and that's the thing. Like, I guess it's because we know what was to come.
Yeah, and that's true,
Yeah.
and that softens the blow.
And that's what
you know,
makes
in the
it-
end, it'll all work out.
Because it was like, I promise, nothing will compare to when I saw Empire. I was distraught when I saw Empire. Like they lost, and I didn't know what was gonna happen next.
Yeah.
With Revenge, it's like you see it happen. It still sucks. It's still sad. But at the end of the day, we know that the good guys are gonna win.
I know you were young. Do you remember like what your initial response was to like Han being frozen, for example, in Carbonite?
I thought he was gone.
Yeah.
I thought he was in chocolate.
I thought he was gone. I was like, he's done. Like, what?
Can he eat his way out of that?
these are two very different.
He's dead. He's chocolate.
interpretations.
Try to see selling chocolate.
Why don't they just melt him? No. Okay. So you thought, you know, I always wondered, because I feel like I watched 2 and 3 like back to back.
Yeah.
So I don't think I ever got the time to process that, and I'm kind of jealous. Like, I was, man, if only I would have had to wait and like just really think that this guy's frozen forever. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because it's like you take it for granted when you watch him as a series. It's like the next episode is, you know, moments away. They unfreeze him at the beginning of 3, but it's like, imagine like Han, he's gone, and like you're waiting years to find out, you know, what happened. And I just thought that was interesting. So in that period, there was a couple of things that kind of kept us going, and it was an expanded universe of sort. I mentioned the stuff I got into, you know, when I was younger, but that's all that we had because we didn't have any new movies on the horizons. There's a couple of games, you know, a TV show like Link mentioned, you know, toys. What were some of those experiences during that downtime of Star Wars? Those things that kind of kept you going.
What kept me going?
Yeah, or well, you mentioned that
Yeah,
this is about the time where you start to fall in love.
Yeah.
with Star
So
Wars.
around my senior year of high school, I start watching Star Wars. I start watching the original, not the prequel, more consistently, and like I end up enjoying it more. I'm like, oh, okay, this is that. Now I remember why my dad and my family was super into this because it's really good. It's pretty interesting, right? But then it isn't until college that I start watching Clone Wars, and it's already, I believe it was already done by then.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to wait every week to watch a new episode. Like, I was able to binge watch it. So that's what kept me going. But that was it. Like, that was it. There's nothing else after that.
Right.
Until, you know.
You know, I saw Clone Wars late too, which is so funny because as a quote unquote huge Star Wars fan, like I just slept on this show about Star Wars. But I remember it specifically because when the pilot came out, they released it theatrically.
Yeah.
You know, and the Star Wars movie, the Clone Wars movie,
yeah.
right? And I was so excited. I was like, all right, it's going to be awesome. The first animated movie. I'm going to watch it in the theater, yada, yada, yada. Then I go, what a disappointment. Like, I was upset.
Like, oh, once again, disappointment.
Yeah, and it is disappointment because to back up a little bit to episode 1, I remember my experience with that. I was like a freshman in high school, and I went to go see episode 1. I had to watch it a couple of days late because the lines were ridiculous and my dad would not make them for me or get the tickets in advance. But eventually I saw it, and I remember just being so alone because I wasn't disappointed. I was more confused than anything because I was like, did I not like it? Did I just not love it? Was it even Star Wars? And I was like just all alone. And I got a call from a friend that I went to middle school with that I was really close to. He had moved away. And he called me right out of the blue. And back then there was like long distance calling and everything. So I was like, okay, this is weird. We hadn't talked in like maybe a year and a half. And he calls me up and he's like, hey, man, did you see Star Wars? And I'm like, yeah, I did. Did you? He's like, yeah. It wasn't good, right? Like, and I was like, yes, thank you. Okay, it's not just me, right? Because I couldn't fathom not liking Star Wars, you know?
Yeah.
So then here we are again. Like I went to the theaters again, and I did not enjoy it. So I was like, I'm not watching Clone Wars. I don't care. I think I did check out an episode or two, and like I was like, oh, Jar Jar's in this. Forget it. You know, obviously I'm young. I'm stupid. I'm gonna stick on like these little things. I'm like, I don't want to see more Jar Jar. Who cares about clones? They're all the same. They all look the same. They all sound the same. So I picked. But then when I was teaching, my kids, it hit Netflix. And my kids were like, you gotta watch the show. This show's awesome. You love Star Wars. I'm like, nah, Clone Wars is terrible. I'm not gonna watch that. I went to the movies. It was the worst, you know? But then finally they broke me down. Like, you gotta do it this summer. You have nothing else to watch. You gotta watch it. And when we come back, you have to tell us all about it. And I did. And I fell in love with it.
That's great.
Yeah, the show is so good. It is just as much Star Wars, if anything. And ultimately, it helped redeem those like everything. No, it helped redeem my relationship with George Lucas and Star Wars in general, because it was like, okay, Phantom Menace, I need that for Darth Maul. You know what I mean? The prequels, I need it for the Clone Wars. You know, and you know what? I needed that movie, even though it's not good, but it's the first episode of this. You know what I mean? So it kind of repaired the whole thing, and then I got into the video games at that time. Yeah. What was your experience like?
For me, it was a lot of the toys, as well as the video games. As far as Clone Wars, I remember when the movie premiered. I didn't watch it there. I watched it on Cartoon Network. They had like a whole premiere there. Like I saw it being advertised for a couple of weeks. Yeah. And I was like, all right, fine, let's do it. And then when I watched it, I'm like, that was cool. That was fun. Uh-huh. And then after that, because again, like I really wasn't like I really couldn't tell. Like I mean, like you said, Star Wars is Star Wars. I'm gonna
Right.
enjoy it. And so then the show, like they're like, all right, we're releasing episodes, but like as I was watching it when it came out on TV, it just felt very disorganized and jumbled, and it's like I couldn't really. There wasn't like a coherent story. Like I couldn't really follow along with it.
Right.
So it just became like how I used to come home and watch Transformers. Like it was on TV. I'm just watching an episode, eating, and then leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was Star Wars. It was awesome, but I didn't know exactly where the story was going.
Yeah.
And
It's like a serialized show, and syndication does not help
Yeah.
serialization at
Yeah.
all.
And for those that don't know, could you elaborate a little bit more on syndication?
Okay, so like when a show enters into syndication, there's enough episodes that they're just gonna play them every day instead of once a week. Now, when you watch a new show, usually it's about once a week, but they just give the episodes like Monday through Friday, and they're not particularly like worried about the order that they place them in.
Yeah.
So it's like they have at least 100 episodes, and they're just revolving
They're
them,
just throwing
and
them around.
it'll be like one from season 4, and then one from season 3,
Like
and then
like Friends or Seinfeld.
yeah, exactly. Which is a lot of that. Well, you know, in the TV episode that we talked about, our top fives list, we talked about like being exposed to these episodes like in random order and not really understanding like the driving force behind the narrative from year to year, and that's what's troublesome sometimes when you experience these shows this way. You don't really understand or get where they're coming from because it's like a mixed bag.
Yeah, and so that was my experience with Clone Wars. And as far as the other stuff that kept me going, video games was huge. Force Unleashed was like that was like a dream. Like I can be that first level is playing as Vader and just mowing down Wookiees. Like that was pretty fun.
Ooh,
and
does not
so
sound like fun. That sounds terrible.
just wait.
It's just
And
unlimited
I was gonna
power.
literally gonna buy the game this weekend because you guys got me into it. Now, like I'm gonna be sad.
It's just the first level.
That game is literally unlimited power. Like you're so OP, and like you get to change like lightsaber colors, and you have like these cool force powers.
You get the dual wield, right?
Yeah.
Like two sabers.
Like two, yeah. It was just so much fun.
Like 2 sabers or Darth Maul?
No, like two.
like two.
Like Ahsoka.
Yeah, like Ahsoka.
yeah.
Which before that, I mean, at that point, I don't think I had seen that.
Yeah.
Anywhere before.
Yeah. So he held him like.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, he holds them like both like behind him.
Yeah,
Right?
oh, I'm so excited. I'm so
Like
excited.
it was a lot of fun, and then obviously there was so many other video games like Star Wars Galaxies. I mentioned that in my top 5. Playing that with my dad
That's
and other
immersive.
people. It was incredible. Like that kept me in it for a very long time after the movies. Playing with other people, joining guilds, becoming Jedi, going on your own quests, and things like that. But I feel that as a kid growing up, the number one thing, the biggest thing probably was the toys.
Mm-hmm.
The toys was huge. Like even off the bat, like at your guys' house, like there was always lightsabers around, just randomly anywhere. I remember the Darth Maul lightsaber, the dual wield.
Yes.
That was incredible. Like I remember playing with that all the time. Qui-Gon's
stole that
lightsaber,
from you
Obi-Wan's lightsaber. They even
That's where it went.
Yeah, it was in my house for long.
You.
Yeah.
And then once like when the prequels were kind of like coming to a close, they kind of came out with like newer lightsabers. Now these lightsabers you had to put batteries in them and lights and sound effects. And I remember I got my Luke, my Return of the Jedi green lightsaber, and then Anakin's blue lightsaber, and those were my favorite. Playing with little action figures, the toys were just. It was my imagination. Like I was making my own stories. I was making my own Star Wars stories, my own Star Wars movies. Being able to, I remember that was like the number one thing that like topped my Christmas list every year during that time period, and it's just it allowed me to enter a galaxy far, far away without having to watch the movies or like I didn't have that content with me, and like you can only you can rewatch Star Wars all the time, but
and we did.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But it was something different that I can enjoy for myself.
Yeah. To the point where like we got used to watching Star Wars every Christmas, and like it became a tradition. Like I would open all the presents, and usually almost every year there was some kind of new re-release of Star Wars.
That's true.
You know, whether it would be the VHS or the THX Master or the special edition, or now it's on now it's on DVD. Now it's on. There was this. I don't even remember what the format was. CDR or something. Something they used to watch in China. The Dream Class used to play them. I don't. But I would just. And I would always get it. And if there wasn't a new Star Wars release, I was opening all my presents. Yay, awesome, great. But we were doing Star Wars at midnight.
Now, like most families will watch It's a Wonderful Life or something like that. Or I mean, even Die Hard in some cases.
Yeah.
But like in our house, it was Star Wars.
Yeah, it was Star Wars for sure. And the trilogy was done by midnight, New Year's Eve to the next day, Christmas Day. We had seen all three of them. Okay, so that brings us to 2012. When Disney purchases Lucasfilms from George Lucas at the time. This was a turning point for Star Wars because it kind of changed everything and it kind of set the path for the road that we have ahead of us. So for the past couple of years, we've been living in this post-Disney Star Wars universe. I don't know if you want to give a little insight on that, what that process was like.
So when they announced that Disney was buying Star Wars, that was around 2012. So I was a sophomore in high school, and throughout that period, like there was a lot going on in my life. I had just moved back to the States. I was at a different school, and there was just a lot going on. But I remember hearing, "Oh, hey, Disney's buying Star Wars," and I mean, everyone knows Disney, but I don't think I understood how big Disney was. Mm-hmm. And then I heard the price tag that they bought it, which was like $4 billion, $4 billion, and that might be the first time that I heard that that amount in money. Yeah. And I was just like, wow, that's huge. But I didn't know what to expect. Obviously, I was excited because like, oh, this means more Star Wars movies, right? Because up until that point, I was like, Star Wars is done. Like, there's no more. Yeah. Like, even with the Clone Wars TV, like, it's not, like, live action Star Wars is done. Like, we're not going to get anything else. The story is complete. And then, like, Disney buys them, and I'm like, oh, so more Star Wars. And it wasn't something that I looked too deeply into. Just, like, that certain point in my life, I was just kind of like, this is cool. I'm interested. Let's see where it goes, and then we'll check back in when something comes from it. Right. It wasn't like I was like, oh my gosh, Disney's buying Star Wars. This is the greatest thing ever. I wasn't as preoccupied with that at the time.
A lot of people thought the opposite too.
That it wasn't gonna be.
Yeah, good. It wasn't gonna be good. Like, oh, Disney's gonna ruin it. You're gonna make it.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people.
Yeah, no matter what, yeah.
Oh, how so? What were some of those voices?
No, just that. Like, oh, Disney's gonna ruin Star Wars. So it's either you really like the idea that they got bought by Disney, or you did it.
Do you think they really do you think those people had in mind, like, they're definitely going to make new movies and they're not going to be the same, or?
Probably, yeah. I'm sure it's most of them were
because everyone's, I mean, you hear this saying, oh, like, the Disney version of this, the Disney version of that. Yeah. I guess, I mean, I can't speak for them, but if I were to assume people would just say, oh, like, Disney's gonna make Star Wars in their own way, like, not necessarily stay true to how me as a person speaking as a Star Wars fan, how we like it or how it used to be. They're gonna make it their own thing and they're gonna ruin it. They're gonna drive it into. They're gonna run it to the ground.
You're gonna turn it into a musical.
Well, I wasn't sure who came out winning at that time. I was like, $4 billion. That sounds like a lot to buy, like, a film franchise. Because I know they bought Lucasfilm, but, like, Indiana Jones wasn't really on anybody's radar. And what else do they make? You know what I mean? And, like, there's other assets that go with the company, sure. But really, you're buying Star Wars. That's what you're buying for $4 billion. And I was like, that's a lot for, like, 6 movies and a cartoon.
And no movies that are coming out.
Yeah. Nothing development.
Like, Disney had most recently bought Marvel, like, about, like, 3 years before that.
Yeah, been there before.
And then a couple years before that, they had bought Pixar. And so, I mean, looking up some information on that deal in Bob Iger's book, they were talking about how Bob Iger wanted to purchase Disney and how he was going to go about that. and because he had just bought Marvel, and he's like, I want to buy Lucasfilm. Sorry, and so he wanted to know how to approach George Lucas, and it turns out they had a mutual friend, Steve Jobs, who had sold Pixar to Disney.
All right.
And so they all got together for like a dinner.
Which is a dinner I would like to be. I would have
That'd
liked
be
to have been
amazing
invited.
to imagine.
What if they went to like the cheapest restaurant?
They went to like Cheesecake
It's
Factory.
like I meant to like a burger joint, like a diner or
You
something.
think
like
so?
Really?
They
Like all
want-
that money? And
That'd be awesome. No, I'm not saying that's what happened.
No, I was about to
Great.
say.
No, I feel like that's where Lucas would go. I feel they need a vegan option for Steve Jobs. But
But yeah, it's a huge amount of money, like thinking about it. But I mean, kudos to Bob Iger, like having the will and the brain to go after those moves, because those were huge moves in Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars and Lucasfilm.
you know, it's funny for me though. Like, Star Wars was already synonymous with Disney. You know, they had the Star Wars celebration. You know, I'm not celebration. I'm sorry. It's Galaxy Nights now, but what was it called? Like Star Wars Weekend at MGM.
And the ride Star Tours.
Yeah, the Star Tours was there. The both iterations. You know, I grew up going on the Star Tours ride. You know, the amalgamations, the kind of like Donald as Darth Maul and Mickey as Luke. You know,
They had that before. When
yes,
they started doing it?
absolutely.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, since always, because it's always been in the park. Star Tours is super old.
I know Star Tours is
You
old,
know?
but
Yeah, in the little shop by Star Tours, like they always had Disney-fied versions of, and they always had Star Wars weekends. Like that's how it all came along. It was like we spend a lot of money on Star Wars. Like why don't we just own Star Wars? Yeah, because they were already doing it a lot. Yeah, Star Wars weekends. I mean, in my opinion, Star Wars weekends was even better than Galaxy Nights because like there was a lot more stuff. It was longer. You could go.
I wasn't
times.
there for Star Wars weekends, but I agree.
Yeah.
I've been to Galaxy Night.
We went to Galactic Nights. It was like such a rush. It's like such a limited time window to like enjoy everything. But yeah, so for me it was like, okay, this is normal. Like this is normal. The question was that will they make more movies? You assume they would.
You have to
for $4 billion. So the first two projects that started that phase was The Force Awakens and Star Wars Rebels, and I believe Rebels started shortly before Force Awakens.
Yes, Rebels was in 2014, and Force Awakens was released the following year.
Okay, so I started watching Rebels right away because I'm kind of a Disney fan and I'm a Star Wars fan.
So 2 and 2, yeah.
So I was like, let's do it. There's a new show on Disney XD, right? I made sure my cable provider had the appropriate channel. I think I'd already seen Clone Wars, so I'm like, all right, I'm down for the next show. Hopefully it's as good as Clone Wars, you know? And it gets off to a rough start, I would say. It's not bad. It's not. I think Clone Wars is like, it takes up a lot longer time to pick up. But like, it's like, okay, it's like Space Aladdin. That's cool. I like Aladdin. You know, it's one of my favorite anime movies, so I was down for it. So, but I know that you guys didn't really watch Rebels right away, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was in college. I didn't have TV. So I just waited until...
When did you watch it? Like, how far into it did you get?
I watched the last season as it was happening. So maybe... it's 4 seasons long, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in the 3rd season, that's when I started watching it after I'd let... Because I don't like watching weekly stuff.
Right.
So I just waited for it to build up so I could binge watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But I still had 1 more season left, so I'm like, alright, so I can enjoy it as it's going on.
What about you, Gabe?
Yeah, for me, I watched, I think it was around the same time. The 3rd season is when
I probably watched it. I know we watched the last season together.
Is when I hopped on. When the show was announced, the show was coming out, I was like, man, and I had seen Clone Wars, but I think I was in the middle of my Clone Wars binge. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was just unattracted by Rebels, by the animation style, the lightsaber. I did not like the thin lightsabers.
Fencing lightsabers.
Yeah, I really didn't like it, and believe it or not, like that turned me off big time. But
that's so funny because I remember you bringing up like, the lightsabers are too thin, and I was like, that's why you're not gonna watch the show? Yes, the lightsabers. And then I'm thinking here are the reasons I didn't watch Clone Wars for so many years. So
yeah, so with that, I think actually it's an interesting point because I think at the time I didn't really understand how important those other projects are, especially like Clone Wars and then what would be Rebels, how they actually expand the story of Star Wars, how important they are to the story, how they push the narrative. And because I just thought, I was like, because of my history of just watching random episodes of Clone Wars, I was like, this isn't important. I was treating them all like filler episodes. Like, I can watch it whenever. Like, it's not it's not like a show that I have to watch in sequential order. And so like it was a mix of things going on in my head. But as I'm watching Clone Wars, I'm like, no, this is amazing. What am I doing? And I was like, you know what? Like, I remember you guys were telling me, George was telling me about to watch Rebels, that it was really good. And the other person, I had some other friends in college who were watching, and they were saying it was really good. I'm like, oh, okay. And then my friend who we had watched the trailer with together, he started watching it, and he's like, oh, this is really good. And I was like, you know what? Fine, I'll give it a shot. I watched it, and I loved it. From the first couple of episodes, it took a little bit getting into, but after that, like, it's just some of the best Star Wars. I really enjoy.
Yeah, I agree.
I really enjoy the team, but also the family aspect about it, like that they have together, the missions, and just how important, how vital they are to the main story. And watching that last season, I was watching it week to week. It was torture. It was pain. It was beautiful. But like, I had to get up before class at 8 in the morning because it would premiere the night before. So then they would do a rerun in the mornings, and we couldn't get them anywhere. Like, there wasn't on a streaming service or anything. So I had to get up and watch it the next morning on Disney XD's website with commercials, with all this stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm in college and I'm waking up before class to watch a Star Wars animated TV show. Like, what is happening? But I don't regret it because that fourth season was beautiful. Like, there's points where it's like, I don't know, it's peak Star Wars sometimes. Yeah. When it's in stride, it hits. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, I can't even explain it to someone who hasn't seen the show, like, because there's no way to, like, verify, you know. Yes, it's amazing. It might be some of the best stuff. That's all I'm going to say, because I don't know how to explain that out.
No, yeah, I agree. It's some of the best. You have to watch Clone Wars, though, in order for it to...
Yeah.
Because you can watch it without Clone Wars and it'll be good, but it just draws back so much from Clone Wars that you have to watch it.
You know, and that's one great problem to have, the interconnectivity of everything. That, like, I have friends and family who are like, oh, I want to watch this. And I'm like, oh, but if you watch that, you kind of have to watch everything they've ever made.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like Bad Batch is on right now. And we'll get to that in a minute, the current stuff. But it's like, you can't watch Bad Batch unless you watch the last season of Clone Wars. And you can't watch the last season of Clone Wars unless you watched all of Clone Wars. But then also, you kind of have to watch Rebels too, because it's all leading to that. And it's like, that's it. That's all of Star Wars. Like, you have to watch all the movies too, you know? And it can be difficult sometimes. Where's the jumping on point?
Yeah.
You know? And
it's an investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And now in this period, we have the new trilogy, right? So you guys started watching Rebels after Force Awakens, so you were already in a post Force Awakens, like, I guess it starts with Force. We could talk a little bit about that, and then really quick, you know, there's a lot to unpack with the new trilogy, but we're not here to talk about, you know, just that. But what was your reaction to Force Awakens, and what do you think about the state of where we are now in a post Rise of Skywalker world?
Yeah, and when Force Awakens came out, starting off when I saw the trailer, it was so. It was just hype. It was pure hype, man. Like, I was so excited. I made a new friend, and I was rediscovering my love of Star Wars. You know, like, going back, those teenage years, coming, like, in high school and coming out of high school, early years of college, I kind of was focusing more on, like, sports and, trying to be popular, or hanging out with friends and doing all that stuff.
When you could have been watching Star Wars.
When I could have been watching Star Wars, yeah. And so I kind of fell out of it a bit, but I remember, like, having that connection, and when Force Awakens was coming out, like, it threw me back in. It turned me into a little kid again. And I went, and I was just so excited to watch it, like, lining up to watch Force Awakens. It was such a surreal experience just because like I didn't get to like go to those midnight premieres, obviously in the original and in the prequels. I was just too young, so I was able to stand in line for a Star Wars movie, and those experiences are crazy because like I mean where I was at was it was in Tennessee, and that's where I was going to school at the time, and it's like they had like a little Star Wars like order, like a local like chapter there of like I think it was they had a 501st chapter there too, and there's just a bunch of cosplayers and people like in Jedi armor, Jedi suits, Jedi robes, sorry, and lightsabers, and they just did like a procession walking through the theater. There was like you could feel like the excitement in the air. Like it was an experience that like not a lot of people get to experience, and I loved it. I loved every part of it, and then watching the movie, it was such a fun ride for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, what's not to enjoy? You like A New Hope, you'll enjoy A Force Awakens, and it was something really really special to me. I feel like with the friend that I watched it with, getting to it because we were on the hype train before that, watching the trailer, and then after that it was so much fun, and also a bonding experience for us, the ones that we're never like we'll always be there for each other since then.
I'm trying to think, why did we watch it together? Why did I have to watch it with my boring friends? I remember because I usually watch movies like, you know, 'cause before that when the Marvel movies were coming out, I was watching with you guys, but then I went to college in Tennessee as well, same school as Gabriel. And I remember Star Wars, I'm like, oh, I have to watch it with...
Did you go opening night?
Yeah. I went with people that I'm like, all right, I guess we're in the same major. Let's go together. But I would have rather watch... I know we watched Rogue One together the following year, right?
Yeah.
Why didn't we watch this together?
You didn't get like a 501st processional?
No, I got like...
What theater did you go to?
I have no idea.
You probably didn't go to the same theater, because the theater I went to was the best one. Like, I had to find the best
I think I
theater
went to the
in area.
Carmike one.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, it was a big deal. It was like a family and friends reunion. Like, everyone I knew was there in the theater, or I knew where they were. If they were somewhere else in town, I knew which screening they were at. And it was just like, I knew what all my lunch conversations and my texts.
It was an
and
event,
calls
man.
were
It was
gonna
a
be
cultural
about.
event.
Yeah.
No, I watched it. It's like, all right, we're in the same major. You like Star Wars. Let's go together, I guess. And it was good.
I'm sorry.
But it wasn't as memorable as it would have been
Yeah.
when I watched Rogue One with
That
Gabriel.
sounds amazing. It sounds more memorable than even me.
Dude, it was
I would have
amazing.
left my whole family behind.
Yeah.
It was amazing, and it was perfect because that week I had found. I mean, my favorite restaurant at the time was Chipotle. That's the one I frequent the most. But at where I was, they didn't have one.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that week I had discovered, it was 20 minutes away from my school. I had discovered a Chipotle variant that like has the same exact setup, bowl type, and the food was great. And I was so excited because I was so happy because
The stars aligned.
Star Wars is coming back. I finally found my Chipotle replacement. And then right before watching the movie, we went to go eat at that place.
Yeah.
It was called Dos Bros. And
Shout out those bros.
shout out Dos Bros, Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so when we were driving on, oh wow, when we were driving over to the theater, I distinctly remember, you know those signs that like they'll say like road closed, like this road is closed like on this date. The day Star Wars is coming out, it said, "May the Force be with you. Drive safely." And I was like,
that's
man,
cool.
that's the grip of Star Wars. That's how like the reach that it has. Like it's everywhere.
You think we'll ever get that again? Like opening night? Because now Star Wars is kind of like a lifestyle, and we're blessed that we have all this content, but we're never gonna.
We've traded it in. We've said it's definitely been a trade off.
Yeah, I don't think there's gonna be another like relaunch of Star Wars, right?
Nah,
I don't think so. Now that Disney
it's
bought
hard,
it
man.
and they're constantly producing stuff, like how many shows do we have coming up in the future, right?
Because
Yeah.
it's time. It's time. Like that's what makes you crave something. That's what
Yeah.
makes you want something. But it's like not necessarily that it's a terrible thing that Disney's doing. But I mean, they have ideas, obviously put into production for sure. But with that time, it's like we don't have enough of a break.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, Last Jedi comes out. It has a divided response
full disclosure, I think everyone here is a fan of it.
Yeah, I really like
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's to me, it's actually my favorite among
Yeah,
these
that
three.
trilogy. Yeah, same.
Yeah. Then Rise of Skywalker comes out. Universal disappointment. I think there's enough time has passed now that we can. That's pretty much the reception. I mean, I'm sure it has its fans, but I think for the most part,
Yeah, I think I agree. I also think that people that were still carrying like kind of like what they felt from Last Jedi kind of like into this one, which I guess kind of like hurts it, but personally I just wasn't a fan of it. But yeah, I would agree with that assessment.
I feel like fans were divided on Last Jedi, and then the people who liked Last Jedi felt like Rise of Skywalker just reversed everything
Yeah.
that they liked about Last Jedi, and the people who were critical of Last Jedi felt like they just went the opposite direction without like rhyme or reason, and like, oh, that's not what we wanted. You know, I feel like nobody got what they wanted out of it. Was trying to serve two masters, like be the sequel to the movie that you're trying to contradict, and I think it didn't know what it wanted to be. You know, and that's a longer conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's where we're at now. And what we currently have is we got two shows on TV. We got The Mandalorian, and we have
Bad Batch.
Bad Batch after the end of Clone Wars, the final season. So Mandalorian is really special to me because I know when we were talking, you mentioned something like I never imagined like a live action Star Wars show. You know?
Never in a million years.
And the irony is that I always imagined it because Lucas wanted to do this thing. And like everyone would keep telling him, you can't do this show. It will cost $10 million per episode. It's impossible. Luckily, Disney, they found a solution to that. You spend $10 million per episode. So, with that being said, very briefly, Mandalorian and the final season of Clone Wars going into Bad Batch, what has been your experience now to this day?
Oh, I love it, man. Some of the best Star Wars we've ever gotten.
I agree.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when they announced that Clone Wars was saved at Comic-Con, like, when they said it, I was freaking out. I was like, are you kidding me? This is real? Like, that final season of Clone Wars I never got, like, I was so happy and excited. And as far as, like, when The Mandalorian was announced, I was like, that was, like, the first time I was like, because for me, I love the Jedi.
Yeah.
Like, that pushes, like, Star Wars for me, obviously, like, I enjoy other things. But, like, for me, Star Wars is, like, a main thing. So, like, there's, like, oh, it's going to be, like, a Mandalorian bounty hunter. And, like, when I heard the premise of it, I was like, okay, no Jedi. Okay, that's fine. It's live-action Star Wars. I was like, I'm still excited for it.
Yeah.
And then when I watched it, I was completely blown away. And the ride that it's been on, like, I feel like watching it week to week and every episode, like, obviously that's grueling, but still, having a new piece of Star Wars, of the Star Wars world, being open to you in a matter of 7 days over a period of weeks is something truly special. Because before, you'd have to wait 3 years for a movie. Before, other times you have to wait longer. And it's like, you have a piece of this Star Wars lore that you are getting to see week to week. And it's not like they're like cheapy episodes or like that they don't put any thought into it. They're just putting it out just to put it out. No, like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and everyone like that, the behind the production of The Mandalorian have done a fantastic job, I feel, personally. I don't know a lot of people that don't like this show, but I'm very happy that we are where we are now. It's exciting. It's hopeful for the future. To know that there is, like, we can have great Star Wars and it can kind of come in a form of like a TV show. Yeah. Because it's like there's obviously like big questions like, can it succeed? Can it do well? But I think they've answered those questions in the form of The Mandalorian.
I agree with you. At first, I was dubious when I found out about that they were making this Mandalorian show without Jedis, because I thought Jedis were what made Star Wars cool. You get me? Because before that, they made that show Star Wars Resistance without any Jedis, and I thought, this is terrible. Do not like this show at all.
Yeah, but that was his own thing.
Right?
Yeah.
But that didn't have any Jedis at all. So I'm like,
That was the problem.
Yeah, so I was like, so is this? But then the Mandalorian doesn't have much Jedi. You
Right.
get me?
Mhm.
In the
Yeah.
season 2, you get more stuff, right? But it was awesome. It was great.
I
Right.
think that it went over. It was like, you don't need Jedi, dude.
Yeah, you really don't.
You don't need Jedi to tell a Star Wars story.
You don't.
You can tell it about just a man trying to do a job and protect someone that's not as someone that's kind of like vulnerable. Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm gonna be honest with you. As I mentioned, I grew up with the extended universe, and so many times one of my favorite books growing up was Tale of the Bounty Hunters. Some of my favorite games were the Rogue Squadron games and the books as well. You know, so I was used to stories without Force Jedi. You know what I mean? So when I heard about the Mandalorian, I was actually pumped because I was like, this is what I want. For years I've wanted to expand the universe, you know, cinematically, the way that the universe was always expanded in the comics and in the books and in the games.
Yeah.
With me, so it's like I want to see what it's like for regular people because not everybody knows Luke Skywalker, you know, and I wanted to see what that was like. And I love the Mandalorians. I was obsessed with Boba, like most Star Wars fans, and this was the show for me. With that being said, they end up introducing Jedi's anyways, and I'm down
It's
for
even
it.
better, yeah.
Yeah, like my whole thing with Mandalorian after season 1 was like, see, not everything has to be about Luke Skywalker.
Season 2.
By the end of season 2, I'm like, I don't care. I love Luke Skywalker. Bring everything. You know, I love the Force and Jedi's. Yeah, and it's so well done that, and it's like a cultural phenomenon. Like everyone knows Baby Yoda. Everyone knows Mando.
The Baby Yoda one, man, like that is everywhere. People that don't like even watch Star Wars or know anything about the show, like they know that he's on the Baby Yoda's on it.
Yeah.
Toys, pillows, like they own like some like a sticker,
Right.
because it's just like, and that's just another way
It's
Star Wars
genius.
like it transcends every, like it's universal, and that's what's exciting about it. But that, I mean, the stuff with Luke in the end.
Yeah. Full disclosure, if
Chef's
you
kiss.
haven't seen the end of Mandalorian season 2, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast. Go watch it right now. But continue.
So with the stuff with Luke, man, like that, I mean, I can talk for days about that, but that moment was something just like, it was extremely special for, obviously for personal reasons, Luke Skywalker being one of my heroes as a kid and a character, one of my favorite, the most beloved characters I have in pop culture. And something about also the green lightsaber getting its due. Something about which, I mean, I'll probably talk about later on, but the green lightsaber, seeing it and it's in all its glory, that moment it has to be like top like TV moments for me. One of the top TV moments for me ever.
You must have had a similar moment, because if that is the pinnacle for Luke, what about your girl Ahsoka at the end of the final season of Clone Wars? Those like last 4 episodes.
Yeah, those last 4 good episodes. Because of previous 4 with the Martez sister and that was
They were fine.
They
The
were-
season as a whole is good, but those
This-
last
that's-
4 is
yeah,
great.
those last 4, yeah, that was amazing. No, I was really excited and I had no idea where this was gonna go. You know how it ended. I'm like, okay, but you know, because of Rebels, we kind of know where Ahsoka is gonna go, and then
Right.
in the Mandalorian, you see where she's going, and I think we all know where she's going on this new show. That she's,
I think we all know, but I'm
we
not sure
probably
we
don't. We
don't.
probably don't.
I'm sure we have an idea.
You know, he's
but-
probably gonna be looking for Ezra.
That was another thing. Like Ahsoka live action on the Mandalorian, like
Yeah.
that was incredible.
That was when you feel validated.
Yes,
for
that
your
was what I'm just
entire
like,
life.
oh
Yeah.
my goodness. And the fact that they got Rosario Dawson too, like they made a lot of good choices.
So I loved it. But my expectations were higher because I told you you can do so much more with in animation than you can do in person, right? So
Yeah.
when that fight scene between Rosario Dawson and that other lady, I was like, bro, I had just seen Ahsoka versus Maul.
Or
And-
when she jumps off that ship and does a front
Front
flip
flip,
and lands
yeah.
on the floor.
I'm like, I just saw Ahsoka versus Maul, and you giving me this?
Also, when she
But that's just me having higher expectations. I think that's the problem with every Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
They just set their expectations
Yeah,
so
that's
high
true.
and are always, let down.
That's true. When I saw that somersault, like she jumped off the ship in Clone Wars, like I was working at the hospital as like a greeter, and I was like kind of like on this like dead time, and I was like watching an episode on my phone, and like when that happens, I started like tearing up. Like I literally started tearing up And then someone walks in, and I'm just like, I was like a deer in the headlights. I was like,
how may I help you?
Like they're probably thinking like something's wrong with my family, like at the hospital or something like that. I'm like, Ahsoka just, and so like I took the temperature and stuff. But I thought it was funny, like that was like having that during the time of like it was a pretty tough time on everyone. That was a very positive moment during a very dark time.
All right. So to end today's discussion, this is where we're at now. We've looked back at so far what's Disney done, and I think some of our favorite parts now that we have the Skywalker saga tucked in, some would say dead and buried, but tucked in, behind us in our rear view, we've looked at some of these other stories. Rogue One, Solo, we didn't have a chance to talk about those. These shows that we're watching, Mandalorian, we've expanded the universe. Now, the universe is ever expanding, much like the actual universe, I think, according to science. But the universe is ever expanding. And on the horizon, what is the thing that you are most looking forward on the slate of a dozen shows, I think, that we're developing for Star Wars? I don't have any part in the development. I'm sorry.
At least a dozen pieces of content, yeah.
Yeah.
Including movies and all that stuff.
So what are you looking forward to?
For me, mostly the Obi-Wan show. That's what I'm most looking forward to. Obviously, the Ahsoka show too, but I think Obi-Wan's my favorite character.
Okay,
And
why?
I just love Obi-Wan. He's the best Jedi. He's
a point.
Yeah.
You have a point.
He is a quintessential Jedi. You get me?
What a Jedi supposed to be.
What a Jedi supposed. Although I think
Jennifer
Qui-Gon.
more civilized.
Although I think Qui-Gon might be.
He needs more play.
Yeah,
Oh,
but we need more. We need
Well,
more
we'll see.
Qui-Gon stories. But yeah, so I'm really excited about that because I love Ian McGregor.
All right, Obi-Wan and like a 1B Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Gabe? What are you excited about?
I think I'll go opposite with that. I mean, just to be opposite, because the Obi-Wan show is just, I can't wait. I really can't wait to have Ewan McGregor back, Hayden back. Like, I know he gets a lot of flack for it, his performance and stuff, but when they announced he was coming back, I was excited. I'm excited, like, to have some pieces of like the past come back and be reintroduced, and I'm excited to see where they go with it. But the Ahsoka one, I think for me, like continuing off of Rebels, I think is gonna be so because of just the way that Rebels, like that last season, like turns out and ends. It's so exciting for me, and hopefully we'll get to see a character she mentioned in The Mandalorian.
Okay. I'm pretty sure we are. Like, there's a reason.
I mean, your name drop for sure, but like also this character is just. I mean, there's books on him, so
yeah.
And I've read some of those books, and it's an incredible character. And to see this person live action is just gonna blow my mind, in my opinion. So I'm gonna say Ahsoka. 1B will be Obi-Wan.
Okay.
But in reality, Obi-Wan is probably
Yeah.
For me, it's gonna be Andor.
Oof.
Because I love Rogue One, and I know Link once told me it was his favorite Star Wars movie, and I was like,
It's not
"Ooh."
once, multiple times.
Slow your roll. Give it like 8 years and then come back to me. No, but Rogue One, I loved it. And the thing about Rogue One and Solo is they kind of get lost in the shuffle in between the chapters of, what is it, 7, 8, and 9?
Not me. Not me.
But I love Rogue One. I love Rogue One, and Tony Gilroy's going to be working on it. Where that Lucas is going to be working on it, that's going to be an interesting dynamic. And, like, I think there's room. Characterization, if I had to criticize Rogue One for anything, it's probably one of the weaker part. It's a more of a narrative-driven story than it is a character story. So I would love to spend more time with at least Cassian. I have a feeling several of the other characters that we come along in that film. So expanding Rogue One is something I'm really, really excited about. And in the same vein, I loved Solo. I thought everybody did a great job there. So if the new Lando show is like launching from that point,
They're getting the Lando show?
yeah,
with Donald.
with Donald Glover, yeah.
Oh, I did not know about this.
We're breaking news to Link.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Breaking news.
And I have a feeling that they're gonna see things like Solo and Maul and stuff like that. Who knows how like Lando specific the show will be, but I have a feeling it's gonna be at least a step to open up that specific time period. All the pieces that Solo put into play that I don't think we're gonna get in a movie sequel.
Billy D is it gotta be in it, right?
I think so.
Kind of like
narrating.
yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Hopefully, the Chronicles. I'm thinking the Lando Chronicles.
That'd be awesome.
You know, that would be excellent. Okay, well, I think we're all out of time for today's episode. We talked a little bit about what our experience was and kind of what we're looking forward to. Sometimes it feels like we're in like a negative place, but based on this conversation, it seems like we all have one thing that kind of ties us, and that's hope.
Hope.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Obi-Wan. Which is hope. You're my only hope.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So, and I think that's the thread. I think that's one of those driving forces in Star Wars. The hope that lies in the center of the narrative, and the hope that it gives us for a better world, a more civilized time, as Obi-Wan once mentioned. So, with that being said, we'll see you again next time. Until then, keep searching.